This message comes from Progressive Insurance, where drivers who switch could save hundreds on car insurance. Get your quote at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. This message comes from NPR sponsor Capella University. Capella's programs teach skills relevant to your career, so you can apply what you learn right away. See how Capella can make a difference in your life at capella.edu.
Heads up, there's going to be some salty language, and we're talking about reality dating TV, which will involve some spoilers. Hey everyone, you're listening to Code Switch. I'm B.A. Parker. Most of my life has been entrenched in reality television, whether it was The Real World or Survivor or Are You Hot, which, yes, was an actual network reality show in the early 2000s.
And this is Are You Hot? The search for America's sexiest people.
Some people may flinch at the genre of reality TV. It's full of tropes and manipulative editing and ridiculous premises. I mean, it's been referred to as a funhouse mirror of our culture. But in many ways, even with those distortions, it can reflect back to us new ways of understanding what we accept as a society, especially when it comes to things like gender, sexuality, class, and race. So, to see a show like The Bachelor and its extension, The Bachelorette, thrive in its 22nd year on the air is fascinating to me.
The Bachelorette starts right now.
It took them 15 years to cast the first Black person to lead. That happened in 2017 with Rachel Lindsay.
I'm just going to be myself. I do think that's going to be a little different. I'm sweet. I'm also sour. I'm sassy, yet classy.
Even with a woman of color in the driver's seat, the show felt stuck in time a little, like a Hallmark snow globe of romance. The mansion, the roses, the fairy tale dates. The formula hadn't changed much in all of those years. The same kind of people were appearing on the show, and the same kind of people were working there. Then in 2020, after the George Floyd protests, the Bachelor franchise put out a post on Instagram, vowing to do better when it came to representing people of color on the show. A couple of weeks later, Matt James was chosen to be the first Black Bachelor, which just wound up highlighting how ill-equipped the show actually was to keep its promise. For one thing, Matt ended up choosing a woman who later had to apologize for photos of her at an antebellum plantation-themed ball just a few years earlier. And then the host of the show stepped down after defending said photos and called out the critics that she was facing as the quote-unquote woke police. And now I'm watching the show as it's in the midst of another first.
Hey, I'm Jen. I'm 26. I'm your next Bachelorette, and welcome to Boston, baby! I can't even believe
Jen Tran is currently on the show as the first Asian American Bachelorette, and even though the cast is more diverse than past seasons, there is only one Asian suitor. So this is what the show trying to do better looks like?
Jen Tran, when she was doing press for the show, she was constantly asked about the lack of Asian men that she had to choose from.
That's Eric Deggans, NPR's TV critic.
Why put your star in that position? But beyond that, if you cast the show right, you could bust stereotypes instead of reinforcing them.
I reached out to him to get some perspective because he's been covering reality TV since 1997. Everything from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire to the early days of The Bachelor. Now, I was going to ask you, what is your relationship with the Bachelor franchise? Like, are you a big fan?
No. I'll say that quickly. I try to be fair to them.
And to be fair, for years he's been pointing out the double standard people of color face when they're cast on the show.
One of the points that I'm always trying to make to these reality TV producers when I talk to them about racial issues is that it's a very contrived environment. It's a very manipulated environment. So you have the chance to create an environment where you either reinforce the stereotypes that we have about, gender and race and all these other things, or you can challenge them. And it's entirely within the power of the show and the producers to make those choices. And I think a lot of times they don't want to see them as choices. They don't want to see it as we are choosing to go one way and not another. But point of fact, a lot of times they are.
I mean, you tried to ask some of the Bachelor executive producers about their problems with race earlier this year, and like to some very deafening silence.
Right.
Why has The Bachelor struggled to deal with race, particularly when Black people are the star of the show? I guess we have our answer. Thank you very much.
Oh boy. That silence happened in February of 2024. And then a few months later, executive producers from the Bachelor franchise came out publicly vowing to do better. But as you heard just a minute ago, this is not the first time they vowed to do better. So in today's episode, we talk through the prickly nature of race in the reality dating landscape, zeroing in on The Bachelorette, but also looking at a dating show that's trying to do it differently.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from the Southern Environmental Law Center, the South's largest environmental advocate and protector. SELC is dedicated to tackling the toughest environmental challenges by protecting our air, water, land, wildlife, and the people that live there. Learn more at southernenvironment.org.
Support for this podcast and the following message come from BetterHelp. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. Prioritize self-care and make therapy one of your self-care non-negotiables with BetterHelp Online Therapy. Fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge at betterhelp.com/NPR.
This message comes from NPR sponsor MIDI Health. If you're a woman over 40 dealing with hot flashes, insomnia, weight gain, or brain fog, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. The clinicians at MIDI Health understand what you're experiencing and know how to help. MIDI Health provides specialized care for perimenopause and menopause covered by insurance. Book your visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. Support for NPR and the following message come from the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org.
Watching a show like The Bachelorette, where the premise is that one woman must choose the perfect person out of a group of 25 men that have been pre-selected for her, the casting is the thing. So I decided to talk to someone who had firsthand knowledge of how those machinations work. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me.
Yes, of course. My name is Jazzy Collins. I'm a casting director, and I'm based in Los Angeles.
I was very excited to talk to someone who is in the casting world because I don't know how any of this particularly works. I just know that the end result stresses me out, and I'm not the only one. Jazzy is someone who, after working for the Bachelor franchise, came out publicly to call out the often racist ways the show is staffed and produced.
Yeah, I started in reality TV roughly in 2014.
A few years later, when Jazzy worked at The Bachelorette as a casting producer, she was one of the few Black producers on staff, and her job was to interview potential cast members to decide if they would be a good fit for that show.
We want to make sure that we're hitting different types of archetypes when it comes to characters that you want to see on screen.
So it's something like The Bachelor, or like, all right, we need a general contractor, we need an army vet, we need a man who's just been unlucky in love.
Yeah, for The Bachelor, they had a lot of requirements for both men and women. There was height requirements, there was weight requirements, there were, very specific bachelor types that they were looking for. All the women, they wanted between like 5'4", 5'5", up to roughly 5'9". 5'10" was a huge stretch, like they really didn't want that.
I still got a chance. I'm 5'9". I still got a chance. Okay.
Pageant women were our favorites to usually cast.
A lot of people with great teeth.
Yes, great teeth. Especially people of color. They were very, very particular about who we had. So Black women were not usually ones that had any sort of natural hair types. They had to be either chemically straightened or they were wearing a weave. And then also, weight requirements, like you couldn't be what they considered was too big.
No.
Yes. So that was when I worked there. I don't know what the requirements are now, but it was very strict when I was there. As for men also, they loved the all-American, like, good boy type, meaning like tall, dark in quotation marks and handsome, the dark meaning olive skin or white skin rather than an actual Black man. They did have Black men on the show, obviously, but in that context it was more of putting Black men that didn't fit they had to fit the, like, oh, he's clean cut, he doesn't look like the stereotypical, like, guy that you would just see on the street.
Have you watched the new season with Jen Tran yet?
I have not watched it, but I have read a lot about it, and I've also, had my thoughts on the casting.
What are your thoughts?
I was very frustrated in the way the casting was handled. Seeing a first-time Asian American Bachelorette, I was really stoked for this because I was like, okay, we've done 2 Black Bachelorettes, we've done 1 Black Bachelor, which went horribly wrong, but then we were like, okay, let's move on to a Asian Bachelorette. Okay, well, this is a good foot in the right direction, but the cast only had 1 Asian man on there, which is not representative of the United States or the people that are going to be dating. I'm sure Jen, which I'm pretty sure she went on the record saying that she wished she saw more Asian men in the lineup. And only having 1 is not indicative of what I'm sure she would have preferred to date. And I saw that there was a lot of Black men. I also saw that there was 1 plus size man when I was like, yes, like,
yes.
I was like, yes. I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. But the one thing that was missing was Asian men, which didn't make sense to me. They have, especially when we were casting for Rachel Lindsay's season, we had so many Black men that came into that office, and we put a lot of Black men on that show. But knowing that you didn't do the same thing for the next first was really frustrating for me.
Okay, I don't want to spoil it for you, but let me just tell you, the bigger man did not make it through.
Oh, no.
Through the first rose ceremony. He went home. But, I mean, the Vietnamese American man, he hangs on for a long time.
That's good.
I mean, the one thing that's happening is, like, he's there, but he's also there as, like, I'm just like you.
Oh.
Or to have someone to relate to. Mm-hmm. And that, I also want to speak Vietnamese to my children one day. We have similar backgrounds in that respect.
But that's the frustrating part of, like, that's why it's so important when you're casting to have diversity and not just have the one, because you are now in a situation where you're going to be treated as the token. You're going to be in this very high stress environment. I say reality shows are pressure cookers. And when you are on one of those, you are going to be in the fight or flight mode all of the time. So knowing that you are the only one that's like that, and you feel like you have a duty to represent all Asian Americans, that's a lot of stress for that person. And now it also kind of feels like he's only on the show for a certain amount of time just because he's Asian, rather than we want to actually hear his story and see him fall in love with Jen.
I mean, this is a truly naive question on my part, because I still want to believe in love. But when you cast these people, it's even like including especially the people of color that get cast on the show, is the immediate thought, like, oh, they'll be a perfect match. Like, oh, this person will love them. Is that a part of the process?
Well, not for The Bachelor, it isn't.
Okay.
For other dating shows, yes, there's a lot more that goes into it. But when I worked at The Bachelor, we were casting men and women before we even knew who The Bachelorette was or The Bachelor was. So how can you actually cast for that person?
Wait, but that's not in good faith. The whole point is like, Jen is there. Jen is sitting there like, I can't wait to find my person. And none of these people have been considered to be her person because she wasn't a thought in the process to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, things may have changed now.
Okay, you were casting for the first Black Bachelorette, Rachel Lindsay. What was that process like?
Rachel Lindsay's process, we knew that it was going to be Rachel up front, so we were casting for her. But, things started to turn after working on Rachel Lindsay's season. After that, we had what we thought was going to be someone from her season on the next season of The Bachelor, and it ended up being Ari.
Ari is a white race car driver. He's got a very strong chin. He hits all the notes. Like, I get it.
Ari, I absolutely love him as a person. He is great. But casting his season was when I discovered that they really are very a stickler when it comes to this Eurocentric white women. They have to look a certain way. All women need to be a certain, body composition to be on this show. And that's when it started to get to me, because at that point, I was in like my early 20s. I was like, okay, if this is what the world wants to see, that's not me. I am not this type of girl. And if this is what they find beautiful, I am not this kind of beautiful. So it definitely got into my head a little bit for sure. But the worst part about it was also the microaggressions and the racism that was happening behind closed doors to myself and other Black employees was just absolutely despicable. And I was like, I don't want to be in an environment that's like this.
Okay, so you wrote an open letter calling out the Bachelor franchise in 2020 after they announced that Matt James would be the first Black Bachelor. And in it, you wrote that people of color, quote, should not have to walk on a set for up to 8 weeks and stare at a crowd of white faces while they pour their heart out on national TV, end quote. Can you tell me more about what made you write that letter?
Yeah, when I saw that Matt James was announced as The Bachelor, I was already like, oh no, here we go again. Black men in America already have a really, really big uphill battle when it comes to just surviving in America. And I was afraid to see that all play out on national TV. I also saw that it happened at the same time as Black Lives Matter movement was really resurging at that point. So I was like, okay, is this a Band-Aid situation? Are they just only putting him on here just to cool everyone out? Are they actually going to do this right? And that's what really triggered me to say, you know what, I'm going to just put all my thoughts on down and, I'll post it. If no one cares, that's fine. At least I got my, everything out. And it ended up going viral. And I was like, what? I had, a whole bunch of news sources come to me and ask, to talk about my experience there and talk about what they need to do to change. And really, it's changing who works there. The people that are at the top are all of the same generation for the most part. Most of them are white. And they are, sticking to status quo because they've been doing it so often and they're afraid to shake things up. And that's what I really called for, because I knew that Rachel going into an experience like this, where she's looking at a sea of white people just producing her, forcing her to do things. Like, she doesn't have someone that feels like her. And I didn't want that same thing to happen to Matt James. And what happened? The same exact thing happened to Matt James.
Oh, boy. When you step back and you look at this franchise and how it has depicted people of color, and a lot of critics place the blame on, producers and their decisions, do you think that's fair?
Oh, yeah. I 100% think that's fair. I think it's because, once again, I think the people that they're putting these people on screen, right? The casting team is presenting who we think is the best. But at the end of the day, the ones that are actually making the television and producing and making these people look the way they are the producers on the set. So if they are perpetuating different stereotypes, that's coming from the producers on set. And then you're going to create this cycle where they are getting stereotyped because the Black woman is acting out and she's angry. So then we're going to paint her as that because that's what she's doing on screen, and that's what we're going to edit her as, and then we're going to all watch it on TV. And that's the cycle that kept happening. And the only way to break that cycle is to not have the tokens, to have a very diverse cast and make it feel like there's a home within the cast rather than feeling like they're the others. I would get text messages from cast members from shows, specifically, especially The Bachelor, that were heartbreaking, saying that they didn't have a great experience. One person is in therapy because of this, and another person, had suicidal ideations because of this. And it didn't make me feel great. It made me feel like I was to blame because I put them on TV.
We reached out to the Bachelor franchise for comment, but they did not get back to us. Coming up, looking at another reality dating franchise that, dare I say, might be doing it better.
We have dating app fatigue, Tinder fatigue, Hinge fatigue, Grindr fatigue. I think everybody is fatigued and just wanting love.
Looking for love in the Love Island villa. Stay with us.
This message comes from NPR sponsor MIDI Health. Women in midlife face a healthcare desert, but MIDI is here to fill the gap, offering expert care for perimenopause and menopause covered by insurance. Hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, weight gain, and moodiness don't have to be accepted as just another part of aging. MIDI clinicians understand how these symptoms can connect to menopause and prescribe a wide range of solutions. Book your visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com.
This message comes from Noom, using psychology and biology to build personal meal plans to fit your lifestyle, taking into account dietary restrictions, medical issues, and other personal needs with daily lessons that are personalized to you and your goals. Noom's flexible program focuses on progress instead of perfection to help you build new habits for a healthier lifestyle. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com. Support for NPR comes from Carvana, presenting this message. Whether you're the kind of shopper who knows exactly what you want or the kind who likes to weigh out every option, Carvana is the convenient way to shop for a car online. Visit Carvana.com to shop thousands of affordable car options.
This message comes from the Kresge Foundation. Established 100 years ago, the Kresge Foundation works to expand equity and opportunity in cities across America. A century of impact, a future of opportunity. More at kresge.org.
Once again, heads up, we've got some salty language and Bachelorette and Love Island spoilers. Parker, just Parker. Code switch. Watching the current season of The Bachelorette has felt like a horror movie to me. Men fighting over possession of Jen Tran instead of, talking to Jen Tran.
I clap for you, even though I don't want to. I smile at you, even though I really don't want to.
So then why do you smile? Why do you clap?
Because I have, what's that word? Mutual respect.
There's a moment where Jen is genuinely afraid of heights at the top of a skyscraper while her suitor keeps asking her for a kiss.
I think you should at least come over here and give me a kiss. That's what I think you should do.
I am clearly terrified, and Sam's not reading my emotions at all.
And we're talking about a show that's been on the air for 2 decades And in all that time, only one person of color in franchise history has ever received the final rose. So my expectations are measured. While reporting this story and watching week after week of The Bachelorette, one of my friends convinced me to try Love Island USA. It's a very different vibe. I watched 27 episodes in 3 days. I'm not proud of it, but I was hooked. Mainly because of the 3 women of color who were featured on the show: Serena Page, Leah Khatib, and Janae Craig. It was Serena and Janae's love stories that prompted journalist Taylor Crumpton to write an article for Time magazine about women of color, particularly Black women, being chosen and being adored on a reality dating show. The article was titled, "Love Island USA Made Me Believe in Love Again."
Hey y'all, my name is Taylor Crumpton. I am a writer and cultural critic from Dallas, Texas. I primarily write about music, pop culture, and politics pertaining to Black women.
That's true, and should be noted, is also beloved by Beyonce. I feel like that should be also noted during this conversation.
I love being a Black woman from Texas. It is such a great thing. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, ancestors.
All right, so you wrote an article for Time magazine that's been really making the rounds. Before we get into it, though, can you briefly describe Love Island USA for us?
Love Island USA is the spinoff of Love Island UK, which is a notoriously popular show in Great Britain. It has as much viewers, if more now, than The Bachelor in the United States. And the premise is that it takes a group of young, hot 20-year-olds. They're in a villa in Fiji doing these competition challenges, but yes, there is a cash prize, but the real grand prize is love. And the most beautiful thing about it is that we as viewers get to see these love stories progress and evolve, but also vote, because like every competition reality show, the finale episode, whoever gets that first pick, that final choice, has to choose between splitting the cash prize or keeping it for themselves. So there is an element of competition. Are you really falling in love because you want to be in love? Are you falling in love because times is hard and you want this money?
Okay, real talk. I watched the show and didn't realize. I just assumed that they were just going to split the money at the end. It wasn't until I watched the finale that I was like, oh, there's actual stakes.
It's only right. So dumb, I'ma split that hoe.
So when they announced the winners and they actually did split the money, like they proved their love was real. I mean, according to the rules of the show, but it actually felt like authentic affection.
And shout out to my man. She's talking about me.
In my piece for Time, I spoke about how the last time we've seen Black couples love each other was the 1990s, the Martin, the Living Single, the Love Jones. And the reason why I think so many references have been made to the 90s in clothing and attire and aesthetic is like, that was a very loving Black era. So when we see Serena and Cordell, I think something kind of like peaks up in the mind of millennials and maybe Gen Z who have millennials, brothers and siblings. Like, we used to have this and it used to be on a regular basis. And we are in such a drought for Black love and genuine love in America. I think everybody wanted to invest in that because we have fatigue. We have dating app fatigue, Tinder fatigue, Hinge fatigue, Grinder fatigue. I think everybody is fatigued and just wanting love.
Okay, can you briefly describe who Serena and Cordell are?
Yes, to throw it back to our Queen Beyonce, they are both from Houston, Texas. Stand up, okay?
I've always wanted you from day one. And you know this.
I wanted you. I wanted you to come in here, even after saying that by your fucking self, and tell me that it's me.
And for those who did not watch the first episode, there is this moment called a coupling, which happens throughout the series where you pick someone to couple up with. And Serena did not initially choose Cordell to couple up with, but Cordell always had his eyes on Serena. I mean, from the first episode, they come in the same color, they're matching. And, even the finale, he says, I always had my eyes on her. So if anybody's a rom-com lover and wanted to see the friends to lovers real trope in real life, we got to experience that with Serena and Cordell, who, grew up in the same city. They found out they grew up a couple of streets away from each other, but never met. So you're just having so many elements of like a star-crossed romance that, who would have thunk that reality TV is giving us better romances than majority of shows on TV right now? We're wanting to see people fall in love, and we're wanting to see Black women fall in love, right? To see a Black woman be loved for everything that she is without having some type of catalyst traumatic event. And even with Serena and Cordell, when's the last time you've seen in media a Black couple, a darker skinned Black couple? None of these women are light skinned or racially ambiguous. They are a dark skinned Black woman, and she's doing his hair. She is braiding his hair. She is conditioning it. She had him looking good because he was looking rough when he left her. And that's an example of a culturally relevant love that we don't see often.
I appreciate you for getting me right, because I know I'm looking crazy. So you make me feel like myself when I'm around you.
How cute are you?
That's it.
I did my man's hair. I think we're in a really good place. I mean, it just feels like things are back on track. It's
and
nice.
Especially if you were a Black woman, to see a dark-skinned Black woman be loved on one of the most popular shows in the world and the most popular show in America just really spoke to why they deserve to win.
But even as Taylor and I were rooting for Serena and Cordell's love story, NPR's TV critic and resident reality TV skeptic Eric Deggans got into my head.
I have always said that at the very least, you should watch with a tremendous grain of salt.
Is their mutual adoration real? Were those tears on the dock of the villa simply for our entertainment? After watching this season, I noticed that the people who are on the show have been making a name for themselves on social media, taking advantage of their Love Island USA fame. So as I'm watching Cordell help Serena move into her new apartment on Instagram, at the same time, she's steadily reaching over 1 million followers. So is this some real romance, or just the edit of a love story we all have been hungry for?
If you're constantly reminding yourself that every moment's being presented to you on purpose, and if you're constantly asking yourself, why are they showing me this? Why are they showing me that? And if you can kind of keep reminding yourself to not let these messages kind of pass by you without being noticed and recognized, I think that might be the best way to sort of deal with it.
Love Island USA's success with viewers like me, their casting, their audience involvement, it's all a business decision. Same goes for the Bachelor franchise. They're just serving different audiences. And the business decisions of The Bachelor have kept the show on the air for a couple of decades now. But some of those decisions have also come at the expense of the few people of color that have been spotlighted on the show.
You know, if you're creating a synthetic manipulated environment, why would you create one that exacerbates prejudice? Why wouldn't you create one that diffuses it? When race comes up and is discussed, sometimes fans react negatively to that because they like the show and they don't necessarily want to face the implication that they like something that is unfair racially to the people of color who compete on it. So, and I'm sure producers are aware of this and, want to be careful about how they're negotiating on these different issues. You don't want to turn off a significant portion of your fan base.
You don't want to make the racists mad? It's like the...
Well,
the banner above
the cynical
producer?
mind, if the cynical mind would say, be careful about that. I mean, again, this was something that I always suspected that TV producers were factoring in, but that they would certainly never admit to a critic like me, that the concern that, hey, a portion of our audience expects the show to be white-centered. If we challenge that too much, we may lose them. It is hard to get TV producers to talk honestly about that kind of stuff. Again, I think that is starting to change because the audience is starting to change and younger viewers are less tolerant of white-centeredness than maybe their older viewers have been. But it's still, younger viewers are raised by older viewers, so they still come with some of that baggage too. And I think it's really important for TV outlets and producers to actively challenge this stuff and break it down, because if you try to pretend like it's not happening, then it will continue to happen.
Eric, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, definitely. It was a pleasure.
And that's our show. You can follow us on Instagram at NPR Code Switch. If email is more your thing, ours is codeswitch@npr.org. And subscribe to the podcast on the NPR app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe to the Code Switch newsletter by going to npr.org/codeswitch newsletter. And we just want to take a moment to announce that the full NPR Plus bundle option is now available to everyone in the United States. NPR Plus includes more than 20 sponsor-free podcasts, including Code Switch, with more on the way. Some shows have bonus episodes, others have archive access or early access, and the bundle also includes extra perks like exclusive podcasts and discounts on the NPR Shop and NPR Wine Club. Code Switch has a wine, by the way, so, get into it. The NPR Plus bundle is a better deal by design. You get all the perks for one recurring donation of $8 a month or $96 a year. And more of your donation goes directly to support public media. So if you want to make a bigger impact and get more in return, visit plus.npr.org and select the bundle option today. That's plus.npr.org. And thanks! This episode was produced by Xavier Lopez. It was edited by Courtney Stein and Leah Donnella. Our engineer was Kwesi Lee. And a big shout out to the rest of the Code Switch Massive: Christina Kala, Jess Kung, Leah Donnella, Dahlia Murtada, Virlin Williams, Loy Lizaraga, and Jean Demby. I'm B.A. Parker. Hydrate. Every once in a while, I find myself in this Carrie Bradshaw loop where I'm and I wondered, is it because of, oh, no.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Bombas. Bombas makes absurdly soft socks, underwear, and T-shirts. And for every item you purchase, Bombas donates another to someone facing homelessness. Get 20% off your first purchase at bombas.com/NPR and use code NPR. This message comes from NPR sponsor Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, where trailblazing runs in the family. From crafting a movement with their iconic pale ale to taking the IPA haze craze nationwide with Hazy Little Thing, it's an adventurous spirit you can taste in every sip. Find your next favorite beer wherever fine beverages are sold. With new brews for every season, there's always something to discover. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, still family-owned, operated, and argued over.